Trump has repeatedly attacked and threatened late-night hosts for making jokes that bruise his ego, dismissed reporting he does not like as fake news, smeared journalists for merely doing their jobs, and taken completely meritless legal action against news networks that do not bend to his will. Recently telling a veteran reporter who asked a question about the Epstein files, and I quote, "Quiet, piggy." Over the last year, Chairman Carr has grossly distorted the power and purpose of the FCC. He has weaponized the agency to benefit Trump and punish anyone who challenges him. In fact, during his testimony before the Senate, he openly stated that the FCC is no longer an independent agency because the president says so. That's, in my opinion, madness. And it makes clear that the FCC is no longer operating in the public's interest. Thank you, Chairman Hudson. One of President Trump's most defining qualities has been his contempt for American media and his hostility towards the First Amendment. Trump has repeatedly attacked and threatened late-night hosts for making jokes that bruise his ego, dismissed reporting he does not like as fake news, smeared journalists for merely doing their jobs, and taken completely meritless legal action against news networks that do not bend to his will. And he's also debased the office he holds by resorting to bullying and name-calling, recently telling a veteran reporter who asked a question about the Epstein files, and I quote, "Quiet, piggy." On duty, or I should say our duty here, is to conduct oversight of the Federal Communications Commission, and that has never been more critical than it is today. Because in Trump's ongoing crusade to chill free speech, punish news networks, and vilify American journalism, there has been no greater ally than Chairman Brendan Carr. Over the last year, Chairman Carr has grossly distorted the power and purpose of the FCC. He has weaponized the agency to benefit Trump and punish anyone who challenges him. He has rubber-stamped shady deals between media conglomerates when those deals have included monetary and political benefits for the president. He opened a sham investigations into small local media outlets for simply reporting on publicly available information about ICE raids. He weaponized the FCC's public interest principles to bully news organizations, and Chairman Carr repeatedly violated the First Amendment by threatening and intimidating broadcasters who aired speech that the president does not like. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. There's a reason why a Republican Senator, Ted Cruz, said that Chairman Carr's actions have been, and I quote, "right out of Goodfellas and dangerous as hell." This was never more apparent than when Chairman Carr threatened to revoke American broadcasters' licenses if they did not take action against a comedy program, The Jimmy Kimmel Show, telling them, and I quote, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." And let's be very clear about what happened there. The federal government threatened to wield its power to stamp out speech it did not like, and this is a violation of the First Amendment. This is censorship, which does not belong in America. There was a time when my Republican colleagues would have been up in arms over all this, when their allegiance to the First Amendment was greater than their loyalty to one man. But obviously that's not the case anymore, and the chairman's misdeeds do not end with his clear and dangerous violations of the First Amendment. After months of delay, Chairman Carr approved the Skydance Paramount merger, only after President Trump was paid $16 million to settle a meritless lawsuit, offered $20 million in free advertising, and received guarantees that CBS's editorial decisions would be tweaked in his favor. This is what we call a quid pro quo, facilitated by Chairman Carr. And that's why Representative Raskin and I have opened an investigation into this merger's approval. The American people deserve to know the truth, and that some of us in Washington still believe that billionaires should have to play by the same rules as the rest of us. Now, in sum, Chairman Carr has abandoned the FCC's role as an independent agency and has instead turned it into an instrument for President Trump's own personal and political benefit. In fact, during his testimony before the Senate, he openly stated that the FCC is no longer an independent agency because the president says so. That's, in my opinion, madness. And it makes clear that the FCC is no longer operating in the public's interest. Quite the contrary, right now, the FCC is failing the American people, and Chairman Carr is failing his oath to the Constitution. So while today's hearing is a good start, it's past time that this committee hold a media hearing a media hearing so we can dig deeper into these and other matters. So finally, let me say Chairman Carr's decision to insert the FCC into policy debates where it has no authority to act while walking away from congressional mandates and existing FCC rules is also very disturbing. While President Trump and Chairman Carr may wish that the FCC could preempt state and local laws on artificial intelligence, Congress has not given the agency that power. The FCC also does not have the power to raise the 39% national TV ownership cap, which can only be changed by Congress. So, frankly, Americans deserve a lot better than this. They deserve an FCC that upholds their constitutional rights, that acts in their interests, not in the private interests of the president. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
It is worth stepping back and asking where the FCC has been directing its energy. Too often, that energy has gone into culture war fights rather than protecting consumers and expanding access to reliable, affordable broadband. From my perspective, the FCC has drifted from its mission in ways that should concern this committee. Let me begin with the First Amendment. For months, this FCC has asserted an apparent roving mandate to police speech that this administration does not like, invoking an undefined and unchecked concept known as the public interest standard. This standard is being treated as a license to weigh in on content, viewpoint, and editorial judgment. The FCC's job is not to police content, root out media bias, or guarantee favorable coverage for any administration. Its responsibility is to regulate communications infrastructure and markets, not censor the speech that flows through them. Both the First Amendment and the Communications Act protect against the FCC interfering with speech and engaging in censorship. In a free society, the government does not get to decide what speech is acceptable or aligned with its views. When the government's media regulator claims the power to judge content or to police bias, we move away from oversight and toward censorship and control. That is why it is so important for the Commission to define what it means by the public interest standard, something I have called on it to do repeatedly. It is also why Congress must insist on guardrails and protect against the FCC acting as an arbiter of free speech. I do want to acknowledge the Commission's continued bipartisan work on robocalls, which remain the FCC's top source of consumer complaints. But beyond that, we are seeing the FCC retreat from core responsibilities that help make communications more affordable, more transparent, and more accessible. Affordability is now one of the biggest barriers to staying connected. Programs like the Affordable Connectivity Program helped millions of households afford basic service. When that support lapsed, the impact was immediate. Yet the Commission has failed to treat that loss with the urgency it demands. Instead, what we have seen is a clear pattern of retreat from practical, consumer-focused initiatives. The Commission eliminated E-rate support for school bus connectivity and hotspot lending by schools and libraries. For many students, seniors, and families, these programs were the only reliable connection to the internet. Ending them removed one of the most effective tools we had to help people participate in the digital economy and to avoid being left behind. The Commission has rolled back limits on exorbitant prison communication rates. These communications are often the only way for those in prison to stay connected to the support they need to return to society without turning back to crime. Vulnerable families will now be paying higher phone rates because of this FCC's actions. The Commission has proposed weakening the broadband nutrition labels it previously adopted, making it harder for consumers to compare prices, speeds, and fees before they sign up for service, and making it easier for prices to rise. The Commission has stalled the cybersecurity trust mark after years of bipartisan work, leaving consumers without a practical tool in an increasingly risky digital marketplace. And in a nation that is home to millions of non-English speakers and that welcomes millions of international visitors each year, the Commission has delayed bipartisan efforts to provide consumers with multilingual emergency alerts. As we prepare to host the World Cup and the 2028 Olympics, language barriers should not become a public safety risk. None of the policies this administration has sidelined was symbolic. Their rollback reflects a Commission spending less time on consumer needs and more time on ideological priorities and the needs of billion-dollar corporations. Without sustained attention to affordability and consumer protection, even the largest investments in broadband deployment, including the BEAD program, risk becoming digital bridges to nowhere. If students cannot afford broadband, if families cannot trust the security of their devices, if incarcerated individuals are cut off from support, and if emergency alerts fail to reach whole communities, then no amount of deregulatory policy will close that divide. We should measure success from AI and other investments in human outcomes. Who is connected? Who is protected? And who is fully included? That is the standard the FCC should be held to, and the responsibility it must return to if it is to fulfill its mission.